said money mindset. What does that mean to you?
Like I grew up like the only thing you talk about was money was negative. So I always had negative things with money. Rich people are evil. We can't afford that. Money doesn't grow on trees. All the stuff you hear. It must be nice that so and so can, go on vacation. We can't, and I'm like, well, this sucks. We don't have any money. We'll never have money. And then I got to be around rich people and I hear how they talk to their kids. And I'm like, wait a second, this isn't fair. You're talking to your 8-year-old about finances. I'm 26 and I'm going, what is this? This kid's got an 18-year head start on me. So mindset's a huge thing. We're always up and down, mental stress, things like that. And money can be one of those things. But if you can work on it with your mindset and start creating good habits, start talking about money differently, and you got to figure out your way to get your hands on some of it to make life easier.
The Spear and Clover Podcast, the show where military mindset meets the spirit of the puppy. I'm your host, Jason Skisick, the entrepreneurial evangelist, and each week I bring you the stories of visionaries who see the world as it could be and can't help but take action. If you're enjoying these episodes, please take a moment to subscribe, like, and review. This is the best way to stay in the loop when we drop new content. Don't forget, the conversation continues in our brand new Spear and Clover community group. Check us out on Discord or follow the link in our bio to join the free group for entrepreneurs or wantrepreneurs. This is where you get to join the conversation. You get to know other fellow followers of the show, hear more from our guests, and pick up resources that can help you to grow your business. I also regularly host live Q&As with myself as well as other subject matter experts. I can't wait to see you on the inside. Some entrepreneurs set out to invest their time and money in passive income generating assets. Others have a burning passion for their mission and simply need to spread it and make an impact on the world. Today's guest is a rare combination of both of those things. Not only is Paul Halme one of the best in the world at helping entrepreneurs build and grow massive wealth, but he is also a real guy who is on a lifelong mission to pass his unique genius on to business owners of the world. We became fast friends on our first short conversation, and I'm sure you'll soon see why. Please welcome my friend, Paul Halme. Paul,
hey,
how
Jason.
are you?
Good, man. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Great, man. I'm glad to have you. So maybe use that as a jumping off point. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is that you guys do.
Yeah, I grew up, small town Midwestern kid in South Dakota, just trying to figure out life. And I was like, went to college, played golf, and I'm meeting a guy up there. And he's like, hey, I'm moving to Texas, eventually, trained to fight in the UFC. This is back in the late 90s. I'm like, oh, it sounds kind of cool. There's nothing really for me to do here. And ended up coming down here and fall in love with jiu-jitsu, which basically changed my life. I started to meet, people that were successful, different entrepreneurs, things like that. I'm like, oh, this is pretty neat. And then I ended up becoming a stockbroker through jiu-jitsu again, because this is in 2000, when the markets were just on fire and it was like, they were hiring everybody. And I'd see these guys at jiu-jitsu. I'm like, they all drove nice cars. I'm like, what do you guys do? You guys are young and you have money. Like, oh, we're stockbrokers. I'm like, hey, I want to do that. And they're like, okay, cool. And I'm like, let's do it. So I did that for 6 years. Best job I ever had. Like, I mean, it was like, for a job, I'd highly recommend it to anybody. You learn so much about money, because I grew up horrible money mindset family. The only time we talked about money is when you complained about money. There was nothing positive about money because we didn't have any money and blah, 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 all the stuff you're not supposed to hear. And then I turned 26 and then I'm a broker and I'm talking to multimillionaires and like, God, there's got to be some kind of secret. And you talk to them, there's regular people that put money away every month. And, once in a while you talk to somebody, you can tell they might have been a trust fund kid or a brat, but that 90% of people I talked to were super cool, basic jobs, but just disciplined investors and started putting money away. And then as my buddy got into the UFC, he accomplished his goal and I got to help him and start traveling and doing that. And I was like, man, I got to figure something else out, because I can't do this and I'm missing out on too much. And I started helping with his gym. And I was like, man, maybe I should have a gym too someday, and then open up a jiu-jitsu gym. And I was like, man, this is it. This is my thing. And, did that. I've been doing that since 2003. So 19 years. So we've survived recession, pandemic, the current recession that we are or not in, whatever the current state of the world is. I've been doing that. And then I got into consulting because I got really good at running gyms and making them profitable. I got into consulting, of course, and that was amazing until 2020, when you're consulting for non-essential businesses that can't be open. Nobody really wants a consultant. So we took a huge hit there. But it's I wouldn't change it for anything. The ups and the downs, it's all part of the journey, and it's just been great.
Yeah, that's so interesting. You said a word that I want to hear more about. You said money mindset. What does that mean to you? Because I hear it thrown around a little bit, but I'm not sure if I really understand what you mean when you say money mindset.
Man, it's a huge thing because, I grew up, it depends on where people listen, how they grew up. Like I grew up, like the only thing you talk about was money was negative. So I always had negative things with money, like rich people are evil. We can't afford that. Money doesn't grow on trees, all the stuff you hear. Oh, must be nice that so and so can, go on vacation. We can't, and I'm like, well, this sucks. We don't have any money, we'll never have money. And then I got to be around rich people and I hear how they talk to their kids. And I'm like, wait a second, this isn't fair. You're talking to your 8-year-old about finances. I'm 26 and I'm going, what is this? This kid's got an 18-year head start on me. So mindset's a huge thing. And what you just go through a lot as an entrepreneur too, because we're always up and down, mental stress, things like that. And money can be one of those things, but if you can work on it with your mindset and start creating good habits, start talking about money differently. Like one thing, I give people an example, like as much as I can remember my kids, they'd always be like, I'd always almost like my parents, they'd be like, oh, I want this new Xbox. I'm like, we can't, caught myself. So I'm like, all right, how can we afford it? That's one of the things that I started switching to, dude. And it was so funny to see like this light go off on my son's head where he's like, oh, Dad, I want the new Xbox. I'm like, all right, cool. How are we going to do it? How are we going to afford it? He's like, okay, I'm going to sell my old games. I'm going to do some chores. I'm going to help so-and-so do this. I'm like, okay, you need a little bit more money. He's like, okay, I could do this. And then if I sell this, I'm like, okay, see, you can solve these problems. And I think we learned, in the last 2 years that like, you almost hate to say it, but they've made money where it's like, they can just print it. It's just like it's an infinite supply, unfortunately. And it's like, and you got to figure out your way to get your hands on some of it to make life easier.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on all of those points. I love the idea of showing your children how they can, the word is manipulate. I don't mean it in the negative context, but manipulate the world around them to get their desired outcomes. I think that's where abundant thinking comes from. It's not wishing and just believing that the universe will provide for you, which good luck if that's what you want to do. That's totally fine if that's your thing. But it's really just understanding that these are just pieces on the board. We have to move them around. We can rearrange them. We can create wealth and value. I love that you're already doing that with your family. And my kid can't even talk, and I'm already thinking about how I'm going to do it. So
yeah, it's like you can mold your children. It's the coolest thing. And you see it, unfortunately, like in middle class people too. A lot of times the parents, I look back at my parents, like I don't think they ever wanted me to do better than them because they, it's like they want you to do good, but not better, because it's just a mental thing where like, hey, this is our status in life. And I was like, no, this isn't cool. I'm going to, I had a very not good relationship with my dad. And so it was like, it actually drove me to like, just full of spite of like, I'm going to do better than you. I'm going to be better than you. And I did. And then it's like, okay, this is cool. But I did mine based off of negative reasons. Or like for my son, I want him to be, go through and do all his stuff and a positive thing and have a positive ass outlook on money. It's like I take him to events, and I'll introduce him to guys. I'm like, hey, that guy, he's worth like $8 million. That guy does, 500,000. He's like, so my son, he just turned 20, but his mindset is so different from a 20-year-old because he's talking to guys that are like, they're all into crypto stuff. And it's like, crypto, yes, no, people, I know guys that have made insane amounts of money. So I'll introduce them to people if that's his thing. I'm like, oh, hey, if you want to get into crypto, you need to talk to these guys because these guys are legit. And so he's been exposed to stuff I couldn't even dream of at his age. Like, and to me, it's awesome. I just love it.
Yeah, it's interesting, man. I think I've been thinking about that a lot lately for one reason or another. And that is like, it's hard to realize that not everybody matures at the same rate. And it's also hard to realize that people that are older than you maybe stopped maturing when they were younger than you are now. And so you meet somebody, it doesn't have to be your dad. I think anybody's parent certainly we can identify with that. But even the person in the checkout line, the person that cuts you off in traffic, all of those people, it's just gotten a lot easier for me to not get upset or irrational and just to realize like, hey man, I think Rogan says people are all just babies that grew up. And it's like, we all stop growing up at different rates. And so some people just are never going to read books on philosophy and like, test themselves and like really stare into the abyss and figure out who they are as people and understand the complex nature of human relationships and all the stuff that people like us maybe do enjoy. Maybe you don't. I don't know if putting words in your mouth there, but
no, I'm into all those things.
But I'm with you, man. I mean, my dad growing up, we were upper middle class. We grew up in Naperville, Illinois, which is a great place to raise a kid. He made it happen, and he made it happen on one income. But even that, I think he did want us to do better. And I think we have, good. But I saw money coming from him breaking his back. And that too has a negative connotation. In other words, to me, I think growing up, I thought of, how do you make money? Well, you break your back. And I don't want to break my back.
No, me either.
Yeah, So talk to me about jujitsu, man. You've been owning a gym for 19 years. You were very early in.
I was very early.
Tell me how that has evolved for you and how that's impacted you also as an entrepreneur and even a father.
Man, I look back at it. I'm like, I tell people this thing too, is to give you guys if you're listening to this, is enjoy the journey, because I've been to really cool destinations in my life. And every time I get there, I'm like, man, I should enjoy the journey more. I was so early with the UFC that I actually would hang out with Dana White, hang out with Joe Rogan, guys I can't get near now. But back then it was like they'd be in the backstage, like talking to the guys at local shows. They're looking for fighters back then. And you're just like, hey, Mr. White, how's it going? And it's like Chuck Liddell and partying with Joe Rogan and these guys that, before Rogan became Rogan, it's like I had all these cool experiences. And I was like, man, jujitsu really, it gave me this crazy edge on life because it taught me a lot. Because I grew up like I wasn't a fit kid. I played golf in college. People see me now and they're like, you played golf in college? It's like, cause I was this scrawny, then I started doing jujitsu and you started getting confident. It's that whole thing. It's like the more confident you get, then it's like you start lifting, you start feeling better, you get more confident, you actually get in less arguments, less fights because you just don't care. Cause it's like, you're like, man, people are like, oh, you guys must get in fights all the time. It's like, never. It's like, that's the last thing in the world I want to get in because I know what, it's like, I've already trained with guys. It's like, I've been through all that stuff. And then also too, like in the real world on the streets, you don't know if he's got a knife or a gun or his friends do. There's no point in fighting. So it's like, but to have the confidence to de-escalate situations has changed my life. I grew, I was in my 30s, a lot of guys are hotheads and friends getting into fights and I'm over the guys stopping it. Cause it's like, man, this is pointless. This ain't going to accomplish anything. But if I was younger and untrained, I'd be like, yeah, let's go kick their asses. It's like, but then you like, when you know what fighting's really about, it becomes really peaceful. And it's like, I got to meet so many cool people and travel so much. Like I didn't do anything as a kid. And then I come to Texas and met some rich friends, that were doing jujitsu. So exposed you like, all of a sudden I'm like hanging out with surgeons and lawyers and cops and federal agents and entrepreneurs. I'm like, this is the melting pot of the world. There's no politics in here. There's no drama. We just grapple and try to strangle each other and armbar each other. And it's like you get done and you feel great and you're close to these guys. And I remember it kicked off another addiction of mine. I was 22 living here in Texas and my buddy was like, hey, he had a really rich student who was like sent to Brazil to go do a tournament because back then everybody thought if you went to Brazil you get the magical secrets. This is back in 1999. It's like, oh, if you go to Brazil you'll learn the secrets and blah 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 blah. I'm like, all right, cool. So another student was like, oh, hey, well, my wife's a flight attendant. I can get you a standby ticket. And I didn't know what the hell that was. I'm like, oh, yeah, I'll do that. And then, I end up 22, I think I was 23 at this point, going to Rio de Janeiro, my first international trip. Every time I was using a passport, and I'm like, oh my God, the world is amazing. It's like, I got to go see more of this world because it was such an eye-opening thing. Because with jujitsu, you see, this, like I said, this huge melting pot, but then you also go to where it came from, the country, and you see like this just devastating level of poor, like kids playing soccer like in the movies with a ball made out of tape. And you're like, my life is really freaking good in America. And I think that's one of the problems we have in America is everybody's like, oh, America, you hear people all the time, America sucks and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, man, go somewhere else for 1 week and tell me about your experience. It's like, you got all these people mad about this, mad about that. I go, all I know is if I go to another country and I break their immigration policies, I'm going to get in a shit ton of trouble. It's like, I've been to China. It's like, that's scary. It's like, I follow the rules. I'm not like, oh, give me this, it's like you just learn so much about the world, and it's like, and you come back and you're like, man, I love America. It's good than bad. It's still my favorite place on earth.
Yeah, I'm actually getting ready to interview a guy that had like a vape pen in China and got locked up for 14 days and deported. He wrote a book about it. Shout out to Chance. I forget his last name off the top of my head. However, you kind of hit on something that I think is very interesting, and that is, traveling the world. I was in the Army. I obviously went to Iraq. I lived in Germany. I traveled all of Europe. I've been to Thailand. I've been kind of all over the world. I've been to South America. And two things I've noticed. Number one is everything's the same. People are the same. Cultures are different. Buildings and, you'll see, oh, that's how they solved the garbage pickup. Their truck looks different or whatever. But in general, we all have the same questions that we have to solve as humans, and how we relate is maybe different, but we have to solve the same problems, right? And so that's why, the more I've traveled, the less like sexy travel has been for me, and the more like interesting travel has been. Oh, that's how they do soup or whatever. Yeah, whatever, right? Or grappling or striking, right? But the other thing is there is sort of an implied superiority in talking about people as if they're less, right? Oh, they need this because they can't possibly do it for themselves. And I do think that's an interesting position that you kind of hit on a little bit of like we realize here, like we're doing so well, things are so easy or attainable or accessible to us that we're like, oh, well, what else can we be mad about or help complain about or whatever? Like,
it's crazy. Yeah. You see a lot, like you said, you go overseas and man, it's such a different world. You see like real really poor people in third world countries. You mentioned Thailand. That's my second favorite place next to America. Is like I literally love that. We go to
Thailand's
training camps there
beautiful.
and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and you see the people and like they could literally have nothing, living in like just a shanty type thing, and they will want you to come to their house and eat, and you're like. I feel can I I don't and they're like, they almost insult them if you don't because they're like they want to like make the experience cool for you and everything. You're just kind of like, I feel bad. I'm taking things from you, but they don't care. They want, that's their way of like having fun and enjoying life. And sometimes I joke around with my wife about moving there someday, like when we retire, because it's like, they just, people without money sometimes almost seem like they enjoy life a little bit more because they don't get caught up in the BS. They're just like, hey, do we have dinner? Can we hang out today? Go for a walk and watch the sunset and do it again tomorrow. And I'm like, you guys got it pretty good. Pretty simple. It's like,
Yeah, I think there's this concept of like that I've been talking to a lot of people about, which is like the 100-year mistake, which is like, from the Industrial Revolution kind of till now, we've kind of been ingrained with these like, oh, don't eat that healthy food, take this pill. Oh, don't work out, do that. Oh, don't do that, go for this. And I think we're finally coming around to like, oh no, I guess the stuff we were doing for 5,000 years before that was actually the right way. And so, yeah, you look at the list of who lives the longest and who's happiest, and those people are typically not the wealthiest.
no.
I can't obviously recite those things now, but when you look at them, it's like some Siberian tribe or, the people of the taiga. I think there was a documentary about the happiest people on earth, and they live off of, fish fat and frozen temperatures all year round. I mean, it's crazy.
It's crazy the way
and they're,
the human.
Yeah. So talk to me about how you help entrepreneurs, how you help people to invest in themselves and create generational wealth.
Man, it's like one of the biggest obstacles I face people. That's why I've been doing a lot more podcasts and Instagram stuff about just to kind of educate. Because I came from being a stockbroker, and I was like, I got open to this magical world of like, it skewed me so bad in one way for like, for a few years where I was like, money was just so backwards. Like I didn't have any money, but I'm talking to multimillionaires every day, all day long. And it was like, okay, I got to get to this. So I got to get to this point. I got to put 20% of my salary away. Got to this. We're not going to eat. We're just going to keep putting money away. Cause I was at that point, I was like so frustrated because I was 26. Now I'm probably 27 at this point. And I'm like, I'm so far behind and I want to get caught up and do all these things. And then I learned, okay, I got to relax a little bit and enjoy stuff. But what I see with entrepreneurs, and it's just kind of, we're never taught anything different, but everybody's like, I'll talk to them. They're like, well, my best investment is my business. So I'm like, well, that's great. Invest back in your business, do that. But I said, you've got to start pulling money out. And they're like, no, it'll be fine. And then 2020 hit and I had two different clients. The ones that were like, oh, hey, thank God I listened to you because I have a reserve account and I've got line of credit and I've got emergency and I got investments. And the other clients were like, I didn't do anything and I need to talk to a bank. I'm like, well, you can't talk to a bank. They're physically closed. I'm like, I wish I could help you out. Cross your fingers and pray a lot, hopefully, but it was a scary time. I mean, I had some really bad conversations with people that I really liked. And I'm like, man, I said, you're in a tough spot. It's like, hopefully you can get back open. And so now after everything happened, they're like, yeah, I'm opening this account and this account because it's really not that hard. There's so many good books out there. Like the one book that really kind of clicked with me and got me headed down this journey was Profits First. I'm sure you probably read that one.
You were going to say that.
Dude, it's amazing.
Before you even said it.
It's absolutely, it was a game changer for me because I was, I would do my own thing and I started doing that. But then the problem with that one is it's super complicated to the point where you almost need a specialized CPA. And a lot of business owners don't even want to have a CPA. It's like, well, at least get a bookkeeper. It's like at least have a bookkeeper for the love of God. So with Profits First, I did that and I'm like, okay. So right before the pandemic, I wrote a book called The Money Fight, and it was like my way of doing stuff for MMA gym owners because I wanted to create something because we get knocked at like, oh, you're a bunch of Neanderthals, all you know how to do is fight, and you're all like really dumb. But a lot of guys are really, really intelligent. Yes, there are the guys that are Neanderthals and dumb, but there's very intelligent people. But I was like, okay, how do I simplify things down to the most basic things? And we kept rewriting the book, and I'm like, okay, I've got something here, and I can help people with this. And then I started helping our clients, and I'm like, they're like, oh, this worked great, do this. And really, if you've read Profits First and then or anything like that, it's just learning how to use. My big thing is automation. Like teach people how to use automation because as humans, we're designed like to mess things up. It's like, it's like we just make mistakes. We do it all the time. We get FOMO, we get this, that. And it's like, oh, you need to move that money. Like, oh, I'll move it next week. And then next week becomes next month becomes next year. I'm like, well, how much money is in your financial freedom account? And they're like, zero. I'm like, you told me you were doing weekly transfers. Well, I forgot the 1 week and then it turned into a month. And so by creating just basic automations where people are having money move without them having to get in their own way, then they start seeing this account growing and they're like, there's there's a lot of money in your account, and obviously it's everybody's different. To some people, $1,000 in a savings account is a lot of money and they feel comfortable. And I have clients where if they didn't have 50,000 in emergency funds, they'd be nervous because they're running, they're doing over $1 million a year in their gym and their payroll's $50,000. It's like there's different levels to everybody, but it's personal. It's like, what is your level? Like, what makes you sleep better at night? Some people want 1,000, some people want 50,000. Find yours in the middle, but getting these systems, just the basic things going, just gives you opportunity, because us as entrepreneurs, we get so tunnel vision of like, I'm going to grow the business, I'm going to do that, and I want my clients to do that. I'm like, yes, that's great. Let's spend 1 hour a month talking about money. Let's talk about it. Let's have a conversation. Let's be like, hey, you know what? I want you have these accounts with these automations set up, and then we'll check in a month and see where you're at. And then once you get it going, then they're like, this is so easy. And then it becomes fun, because then the next part I call like a 3-phase system. So the first phase is just like, where are you? What do you want? And let's set some accounts up and some automation. And then the next phase is like, hey, there's money in these accounts. Let's go find some stuff. And you and I were talking before, some people are like, oh, I hate the stock market. It's rigged. And don't invest in the stock market. I want to do real estate. Invest in real estate, but create accounts that you can use to have the money. And then you start acquiring. For me, it's like, I always fall back to the stock market, because I always use Michael Jordan as an example. It's like, to me, the stock market is the fundamentals. It's like, having an IRA, having a health savings account, having an emergency account, things like that. That's just the fundamentals. Got to be done. It's like chess passes and, the stuff Jordan would start off practice with, and, going through that, having that. Then you start bolting stuff on. Then it becomes fun. Then it's like, you hear buddies that are talking about, hey, we're thinking about doing this commercial building deals coming up. If you got 50K, you can get in. It's like, oh yeah, I got some money over here. It's like, cool, I can use it. Where the biggest frustration people have is when you get older, like I'll be 50 in like 3 years. Every year I get older, the more opportunity I start seeing. And I'm like, oh yeah, I want to get that. And then I'm like, I have friends that are like, oh man, I wish I could do that. And I'm like, yeah, you did. You don't listen. You don't put money away. And now opportunities are coming to us. And it's like, then they got to go out and find creative ways to find financing. And that can be a headache, because then you just never know what's going to happen with that. But yeah, that was kind of a long-winded of what I do. I get excited about it.
Sorry. Yeah, I love that though, man.
Today's show is brought to you by High Level CRM. High Level is an all-in-one platform designed to help entrepreneurs grow their businesses without the need for multiple softwares or an IT team. Not only does their easy-to-use software allow you to track and manage your leads throughout each phase of the relationship, but it also allows you to build funnels, track stats, and more. Guys, I sat down and added up the cost of software I was able to replace with just one app, and it was over $1,000 per month. Because this is an all-in-one application, I also save a ton of headaches connecting apps and building automations, and the team at Go High Level does a great job of getting you started quickly and easily when you sign on. I cannot more highly recommend these guys. Right now, Spear and Clover listeners get a free 14-day trial of High Level CRM for themselves. Click the link in our show notes to support the show and get started on your free 14-day trial today.
I'm super excited that today's show is brought to you by the Global School of Entrepreneurship. Most practicing entrepreneurs cannot take 2 years away from their growing business to attend a full-time campus-based program or spend every weekend away from family and business for a couple of years. Finally, there's an accredited program specifically designed for you to work on and grow your business while completing your MBA. The GSE MBA complements the needs and schedules of someone actively engaged in an entrepreneurial venture while still covering the accredited curriculum expected from any MBA program. The Global School of Entrepreneurship offers a unique offering called the Mastermind to MBA program. It consists of 10 students who work together in a forum-style cohort and meet every other week for a year. The GSE MBA helps you develop skills in critical thinking and strategic planning. Students also develop competencies in leadership, decision-making, and communication with both employees as well as the important stakeholders in your business. You will be exposed to world-class academics and fascinating guest lecturers. You'll work on your business while working in your business. Students are guided by real-world entrepreneurs with decades of experience starting and scaling businesses just like yours. Best of all, I'm beyond proud to announce that the Global School of Entrepreneurship has agreed to offer one Spear and Clover listener a scholarship to join an upcoming Mastermind to MBA cohort. They are looking for someone just like you to bring a unique perspective to the program, and they are accepting applications right now. To learn more and to apply, simply go to www.gse.mba/spear. That's www.gse.mba/spear. Don't miss this opportunity to level yourself up and surround yourself with other like-minded entrepreneurs just like you. Once again, to apply for the GSE MBA Spear and Clover Scholarship, simply visit www.gse.mba/spear. That's www.gse.mba/spear. Today's show is brought to you by Scaling with Media. I mean, literally, like if it weren't for the folks at Scaling with Media, you would not be getting this. Scaling with Media is a truly revolutionary company for any entrepreneur who wants to reach a larger audience without taking on the years of experience necessary to master the required skills. These guys do it all. From helping you develop your creative plan to editing, sourcing content, copywriting, ads management, and way more. Whether you're looking to launch a YouTube channel or podcast, or you just want to scale your business out to more eyeballs, these guys are the absolute best one-stop shop. But that's not all. Right now, Spear and Clover listeners who sign up for their brand launch package will receive a free, that's right, free professional grade studio kit that I'm actually recording right now on. The studio kit includes a professional microphone, stand, lighting, and headphones, and is worth well over $500. Take action now by going to scalingwithmedia.com/spear and claim your free studio kit. Again, that's scalingwithmedia.com/spear, scalingwithmedia.com/spear. Now back to the show. I think something that you said that really resonates with me is the idea, and it's a true idea, that I can make the biggest return within my business.
Oh, 100%.
So as entrepreneurs, particularly like not startups that are backed by angel investors or tier 2 or tier 1, first round, second round investors, but bootstrapped, visionary, mission driven, like tribal businesses, which are jujitsu gyms, CrossFit gyms, chiropractors, these types of people, real estate agents, whatever. It's true. I could make 1,000% return at my gym. There was a time where we were doing regularly more than $2,000 return or 2,000% return, on ad spend when Facebook was making it rain back in the day.
So great back in the day.
Yeah, right. And at that time and at that stage of my life, no children, we weren't married yet. Well, of course, man, fucking let her rip. But now you have a child at home, you're trying to plan for school, you're trying to plan for, all numbers of different things, and the numbers add up quick. And it just, especially if you want to live a stress-free environment, I think I really identify with that as an entrepreneur, the need to diversify, if nothing else, just to be reduce the amount of stress. And then one other thing real quick, I know I don't want to just talk all the time, but
no.
Another thing that I highly recommend for all entrepreneurs, you said the right word, automation of like, your bill paying, just take all of the personal stuff that regular people maybe have time for and get it off your plate. Your renewal of your car plates, your water bill, your electric bill, your outfits. I have like I have like a t-shirt drawer, a long sleeve drawer, a pants or shorts drawer. That's it. And I just reach in and pull it out. And if it's not black, it's olive green, right? And so, for me, that's been simplified. But what are some other things like entrepreneurial hygiene, like hacks that you maybe have used for yourself or maybe have helped other people with?
Hacks as in to make more money, or
just as an entrepreneur, like you talked about automating. Are you setting up? Because as soon as you start talking about profit first, I'm thinking multiple accounts. So there's different accounts, and you're setting up, an automated withdrawals and transferring over. Anything else kind of along that vein that we haven't discussed yet?
Oh yeah. So that's the entry level to it. So then what I do is I start people off with that because it's like the basic part. And then the coolest part is I think of it like a big machine with big gears. And it's like, okay, now we got this. Let's bolt on another gear. Because like you said, you have a kid and you're like, oh my God, what am I going to do in 18 years? Okay, I'm going to open up a custodial Roth or a 529 and you start putting money away in that gear's moving, all run through automation. Then you bolt on another gear for one that I really like telling people about is health savings accounts. You haven't looked into those, especially if you're self-employed, which probably most of the people listen to this are. I mean, it's just a game changer. It's insane to have that powerful of an account. Like I always joke around, like they're gonna take this thing away eventually because it gives you so much just freedom. Like you said, the stress. Like I give an example, like back when we were still coming up, and like I said, we were grinding and working hard and putting all of our money in our business. I was still funding all these accounts, but it wasn't funded as big as they are now. It takes time. But I was flying home from Infusion Con back in the day, and this is probably one reason why I don't use Wi-Fi in airplanes anymore. But I get a text and it's like, hey, Chase broke his arm, run away to the emergency room. And I'm in the air. I'm like, what? I'm like, what do I do? I'm like freaking out. It's like my kid broke his arm. I'm in the air. By the time you get to the airport and you get your bag and you get your car and you drive home, they're already back from the hospital. He's got a cast on. You're like, oh, thank God, nothing major. And then guess what comes? The freaking bill. It's huge. It's like this is years ago. It's probably 12 years ago, 13 years ago, it was like $5,000. And I'm like, that's with insurance. I'm like, I have crappy insurance apparently. It's like, but and I was kind of getting mad and I'm like, okay, I got to take money. Okay, how much we got in checking savings? I'm like, and then I was like, oh crap, I have a health savings account. yeah, here's the card, honey. Call, just use this one. Boom, 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 gone. No stress, no nothing. Didn't hurt. It wasn't like, hey, we're not going to be eating out for the next 6 weeks, or it's like we're not going on vacation this year. Then I have to tell my kid, hey, we can't go on vacation because you broke your arm because I didn't do a good job planning our life financially. So, like you said, stress level was like completely annihilated. It was gone. I wasn't even stressed. I was like, oh, it sucks, $5,000, but it was in the health savings account. The earnings are tax free for medical expenses. Use the debit card. Good.
Yeah. I just wanted to break in there real quick. Can you kind of maybe break down specifically why it's better to use a health savings account? Because talk to me about numbers. What would I pay if I came out of pocket? How did that money get there as an entrepreneur versus how do I get to put that money in there, and where does it come from for an HSA? Maybe that would be helpful to somebody listening.
Oh yeah. Especially, sometimes I call it black belt brain where I start going, simplify everything.
I still wear my white one.
So health savings account, if you haven't looked into them in your state, they're amazing. It's like back when I was a broker, our company was switching healthcare plans. They're like, hey, we got this new thing, and I'm like, they gave us like $1,000 into it. I'm like, well, I'll try it. And then didn't think much about it. And it kept accumulating. And what's cool about it is the money you put the money in, you get a tax deduction for putting the money in. So it's kind of like a regular IRA. And then where it gets really magical is if you take money out for qualified expenses for medical, whatever, you don't pay taxes on the earnings. So for example, say you built the account for $10,000, right? And the S&P 500 returns 10% a year historically. So now you're talking $1,000 a year that account makes. So say every year you have $800 in medical expenses and you use your debit card. Okay. Boom, 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 boom. Well, then at the end of the year, you didn't pay anything out of your checking or your savings. You paid it out of your health savings account, and then your health savings account still went from 10,000 to 10,200. And then the next year it goes up. And then if you get lucky, and you have a couple of years where you're like, hey, nobody broke anything and we did pretty good. And then you max it out. Now you're at 16,000, you get another 10% return. That's $1,600 a year. Where the magic number is, I tell people, if you can plan it out, so especially for us, when we get started, I hate having these conversations in my head because I don't want to talk about myself being old, but I'm like, man, in like 12 years, it's like, or 20, it's like, I got to be thinking about medical stuff because that can wipe you out. I mean, it could wipe you out. So it's like, if you build that account up, I tell people try to build that account. It sounds like a big number when you hear me say it because it's for a far out down the road, but put 30, somewhere between $30,000 to $100,000 in that account, and you're not going to have stress in your retirement age until you get to Medicare and stuff like that. But then, because if you have, say, even we'll use a round number, 30,000 at 10% return, it's getting $3,000 a year, so it almost could pay all of your expenses up to your copay. And then obviously you get say, well, my copay is $50,000 or $5,000. Okay, now you need $50,000. Your copay is $10,000. Well, you need to make your goal get $100,000 in that account. But you can do it because you can put money away every year. You get the deduction, and then you get the growth whenever you invest it in. Obviously, don't go invest it into crazy stuff. Yes, I tell people it's like stick to your basic fundamental investments. Don't put it into like crazy things. I still like Bitcoin. I play with Bitcoin, but I don't use like retirement money or health savings money for Bitcoin and Ethereum and stuff like that. But I still dabble in it. But yeah, health savings accounts, if you had looked at those are a huge hack for entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. I also would add that when you put that money in the account, it's not taxable income for your business. It's also not taxable income if you're a W-2 payer, if you pay yourself with a W-2. So for myself as a gym owner and then now a kind of solo entrepreneur, I'd like to pay myself with a W-2 so it's easier to buy houses. It's easier. There's a million reasons why. Well, I could get double taxed there. And so any way I can possibly find to write it off, like even qualified purchases through Amazon, I always explain to my wife, it's like 40% off of the entire site, depending on how you want to view the tax code, right? And if the IRS is watching this, I only use it.
We only use it for qualified medical expenses.
I'm in uniform right now, This is
it's a huge hack though. It's like I love talking about stuff like that because it can just change your life because it's like the older you get, you start to worry less about the hustle and more about like the stress level. It's like, I just want to be chilled out, having fun, going on vacation, traveling, doing stuff like that. And if something happens, it's like, all right, which account do we take it out of? And I think that's the biggest hack for entrepreneurs is you start with the savings account, obviously, then you start tacking on all these different accounts. It's like a choose your own adventure because when you get to that, they always say, what is it, 50 to 60 is your prime earning years, like that 10-year window is where you're going to make the majority of the money you're going to make in your life, theoretically. But I think as we live older, I think it's going to get pushed out to 70 for us entrepreneurs that never want to retire. Yeah. But if you look at it like you get this influx of money coming in for like 10, 12 years later on in life, even if you're behind, like somebody listening to this is like, well, that's all great, Paul, but I'm 45 and I have zero. I'm like, oh, cool. Let's start now. I don't care. It's going to be a little harder. It's going to sting a little more. But did me putting $500 a month away as a newly married, kid in the early 2000s, did that hurt more? Or a 50-year-old guy where I tell him like, hey man, if you want to have this in retirement, you got to be putting $2,000 to $3,000 a month away. And they're like, oh my God. And I'm like, yeah, but you make $30,000 a month, bro. Come on, it's 10%. And then they're like, okay, now you said it that way, I can do it. Because it's funny how entrepreneurs think. Like I have friends I call them like they're broke in between launches all the time because they're always doing these big launches. And then they spend all the money, and then they're stressed out. And I'm like, what are you stressed out about? Like, I have no money. And I'm like, why aren't you putting money away? And like, oh, like, okay, put 10% of your launch away every time you do a launch. Put 10% somewhere. And they're like, okay, I'll try that. And then they're like, hey, that was way less stressful. I'm like, I don't know how you guys live like this. It's like I'm like you. I'm a W-2 guy. Even though I'm self-employed, man, I'm a W-2 guy too because it just makes life easier because you can access things that because man, if you're just straight 1099. They just give you hell on everything.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. And you talk about this resistance to starting, right? And you own a gym. I've owned a gym for 12 years. I work with entrepreneurs. There's this weird thing where as entrepreneurs, we see our clients having resistance to getting started. So there's how many people have sat in your parking lot, cried, and then driven home 5 times before they ever walked through the door, or how many people, never start investing. I just want to get a little more poor and a little more fat before I start my journey. And I just think that that's such a waste. And as entrepreneurs, if we can just figure out a way to reach those people better, I think we would all be served well, because I know people across all different industries, it's that ugly little shadow in the corner of the room that you don't want to look at, you don't want to talk about it, but it's probably the one thing that's making you the most unhappy and holding you back from achieving the things that you want to do, right?
It's huge. And I see it a lot with entrepreneur men. It's like, because, they think, and the biggest one I get all the time is when I have money, I'm going to it. I'm like, and I'm like, no, you're not. That's like, and then they get mad at me. I'm like, what do you do when somebody comes in your gym? They say, hey, I'm going to join. I'm going to go lose 20 pounds before I join your gym. And you're like, it doesn't make any sense. And then I tell people a lot of times it can save your marriage too. If you're listening to this too, is like, once you start changing your mindset about money, talking about money, I call it money dates. I forget where I got it from. I stole it from somebody. I'm sure it's like steal like an artist a book, but it's like, man, go on money dates, talk about money, make it like the last thing I want is like my marriage to blow up, because I've had so many friends get divorced because of money, because of just nonstop fighting and blah, blah. And, I'm like, dude, you didn't tell your wife about this? I'm like, you're a freaking idiot. It's like, start talking about it. And my wife's helped me out a lot too, because, even when we were poor, versus now, it's like when the pandemic happened, I was freaking out like everybody else. Cause I still had my investments, and thank God the market did good that year. And it was actually, we were joking around before the call, like people that were trading during the pandemic, they were making money. Like my biggest regret, I think, was not trading, because I was like, I'm too nervous. I'm just going to stick with what I got. And it was still good. So we were going through the pandemic, and I was like, man, what's the next thing I should do? And then I was like, oh, I know, we're going to open a franchise. We got money. Let's go open a franchise. That way. And I was a genius. I'm like, I'm going to get an essential business, something with food, like not Subway, but something like that. And then my wife was so funny. She's like, and what are you going to do the first time someone calls in sick and we got to go make sandwiches? And I was like, you know what? I don't want to do that. I'm like, thank you. You saved me probably, whatever the down payment is for a franchise, and wasted years, because I was in panic mode of like, if my gym cannot reopen, I need an essential business. So I'm like, what do I get? And she's like, well, let's calm down there, big guy, and we'll figure it out. But if I wouldn't have put that out there, can you imagine her face if I had to come home and be like, hey honey, we bought a Subway? But just have money dates, talk about money, because, your significant other, they'll give you feedback. And then it's fun too, because I got my wife into investing. We joke around about stuff. She doesn't come from that kind of a background. It's like, she never, but that's like, now she's like, oh, did you see Netflix earnings? Now they're rolling out an ad supported. I'm like, who are you? I'm like, but it's just part of our life. We talk about money all the time, and our kids, my sons always talk about investing. And that's one thing to give people too. The reason you want to talk to your kids so early is it goes back to Einstein, the eighth one of the world's compound interest. So the problem we have is we run out of time, but the earlier you can get your kids investing, it is so easy. An 18-year-old, I want to say it's like $115 a month, and they'll be a millionaire when they retire. I mean, it's comical. It's just like, but nobody starts at 18, unless they come from a wealthy family, and the family's like, hey, we opened up this trust account for you, and you can't have it till blah, blah, blah time. And that's why the old saying, the rich get richer, is because they start things off early with their kids.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, this has all been super helpful, man. I particularly like the idea of just taking that first step, starting to change the conversation, and getting into very simple, kind of automatic, even as you said, tactics and techniques to become wealthy. So I appreciate you sharing that stuff. There are 2 questions that I ask everybody that comes on the show, and I'd like to ask them to you now. Paul, are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right, brother. Question number 1. If you had access to unlimited financial capital, how would you profitably grow your current business?
Ooh, unlimited.
Unlimited, but it has to be profitable growth. So
Okay,
you can't just burn it.
So a consulting company or physical gym?
Both, either or both.
Man, what I would do, I would invest in coaches and teaching them how to run a profitable same model, because in my industry, and it's probably the same like in the CrossFit one, is you get cannibalized by people that are good employees and they go open up their own gym, then they steal some people and you got to restart. So it'd almost be like the Chick-fil-A model, basically, where I would still own it and they would be getting in their percentage, and then you could have a gazillion locations.
Yeah, that's interesting. We should talk more about that because I have thoughts on that. What about for the consulting company?
Consulting company, that would be a little bit trickier. Unlimited to make it profitable would be, it'd have to expand outside of just the martial arts world, because as niched as we are, it's one of our biggest problems we run into is we run out of schools to market our services to. So it would be to branch out. And it's kind of stuff that we're doing now with the financial things, is breaking off a financial consulting side of like just helping entrepreneurs understand money, and then creating a network where people can get together and talk about money and the stuff. Because we all know what it's like if you're an entrepreneur, you start talking about money to like your clients or your friends and you're an asshole. They're like, oh yeah, well, I'm slaving away and you're just over at the gym teaching jujitsu. It's like, that's not what I do, dude. It's like I work 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, maybe 6. But so that consulting one, I would do kind of what we're doing is and expand that into the educating, and then going down that road.
I love that, man. I think that's a smart answer. Question number 2. If you had to give up every business or thing that you've ever done and start something totally new that you've never tried before for a business, what do you think that would be?
Ooh, give up everything and start something.
Nothing in financial, nothing in consulting, nothing in martial arts or fitness.
It'd be tough. Going out of all those ones, I would go into international tours.
Perfect answer. Tell me more.
Because that's my favorite thing to do. So let's go make some money, taking people on cool experiences. That's one thing. Because you said it before, you've traveled the world, I've traveled the world. A lot of people are scared to do it. And it's like, just do it. It'll change your life.
Yeah. I like there's a lot of, and I've always wanted to do this. It's one of those things you talk about over beers with your buddies, but it's like, there's a jiu-jitsu camp in South America. There's a CrossFit camp that's going to be a cruise all through Europe or whatever. I just think that's such a cool way to do it, where you have like a kind of a tribal mentality of bringing people that have similar interests together and then taking them around and seeing the world. And if you run it, you get to be there and do those cool things. So that's a super interesting answer. Paul, where can people find you if they're interested in hearing more?
My website, paulhalme.com. I update my blog there, give away a lot of good free content there. Social media wise, I like Instagram the best. Instagram.com/PAUL_HALME. Unfortunately, the one downside to Instagram is the copycat accounts. They try to get you to send them crypto. So if you look at my account, even though I like crypto, it says in my account, I will never ask you for crypto, because I've had people get scammed from fake accounts just because I'm in the whole investing world. But it's like, Instagram, I love it. It's my favorite place because it's happier. And I love another hack for entrepreneurs is just go in there and start following people and people you want to look up to and their stories. And it's awesome. You learn so much.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Well, thank you so much, Paul. And I'm sorry for mispronouncing your name at the beginning.
No, don't worry.
All right, brother. Thank you so much. And we'd love to hear from you anytime.
Thanks, Jason.
Thank you guys so much for watching or listening to the show. If you enjoyed the show, please don't forget to show us some love by liking, rating, and subscribing so we can keep making more and better content. If you'd like to support the show and get a great additional content like exclusive shows and even live group masterminds, please head over to patreon.com/spearandclover to become a member of the tribe. If you're interested in learning more about how we help entrepreneurs, visit spearandclover.com or message us on any of our platforms. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon.